Welcome or welcome back to the show. I'm Anna, and you're watching Anna Speaks Out. Thanks for being here. So this is part 3 of my series of supernatural events that have happened to me. And in the first 2 episodes, I was talking about things that happened during my childhood and teenage years. And so now we're going to start talking about the things that have occurred so far during my adult years. It's actually kind of surreal, kind of odd to me that I don't remember any significant spiritual or paranormal type of occurrences between the ages of 15 to about 26, but for a good number of those years, I was actually an atheist and not engaging in the spiritual world, so that probably has a lot to do with it. But after realizing that there had to be a God after my abusive atheist ex-boyfriend exposing me to quantum physics, I got into some New Age and pagan practices. And one day I did an oracle card reading for my sister that turned out to be totally accurate. She was freaked out when I told her, though, as a lifelong Christian herself, so I never did one for her again. And I also currently do not have any plans to do anything like that in the future. So that occurred when I was about 25 or 26 years old. And then I think that same year, or right around then, I actually took part in a meditation circle that was prompted by my older sister. And my younger sister took part as well, even though she's always been a Christian, so I find that interesting. But we actually held stones in our hands that my older sister suggested. I'm not sure what type they were, what they were supposed to do, but, you know, there's a belief that stones can harness some energy or something along those lines. So we did that. We were holding hands, and we just sat in a circle and meditated, and I had one of the most significant, I would say, spiritual experiences that I have ever had. Full transparency disclaimer, I was on Adderall that I was prescribed at the time, 20 milligrams, and I also smoked a little weed. So, you know, that could have something to do with why what occurred. I was also pretty new to both of those things, so, you know, they affected me more strongly. However, I have combined the two multiple times since then and never had anything close to the same type of experience. And I even got it okayed by my psychiatrist who was prescribing the Adderall to combine the two. So, yeah, I don't think it had a whole lot to do with it, honestly. But that out of the way, I had a very vivid and clear vision in my mind. You might call it a hallucination, but it was just very, very vivid. I also had very strong feelings of just positivity and love and just the most wonderful emotional sensation I maybe have ever had. The obvious conclusion here that I would not blame you for having is that maybe those strong positive feelings were just the euphoria from the weed that I smoked, but it really was something deeper and kind of more real feeling, for lack of a better word, than any, you know, euphoria has ever been. And what I saw was a lion's head surrounded by 3 different gemstones, one on the top of the head and one on each side, and they were colored red, blue, and purple. When I told my sisters what I had seen and felt, my older sister suggested that the lion might have represented strength. I was still actually living with the extremely abusive boyfriend that I had, so I wouldn't be surprised if she was picturing strength for me to leave, and I did very shortly after that. But then my younger sister, who was always a Christian, said that the lion could represent the biblical Lion of Judah, aka Jesus Christ. As far as I can remember, I didn't really have any strong feelings about what it meant at the time, but not too long after that, I did decide to be a Christian. And I then took it to mean what my younger sister said, the Lion of Judah. And the blue gemstone I saw to represent the living water, aka Holy Spirit, spoken about in the Bible. And then red represented the blood that was shed when Jesus was crucified. because he wouldn't stand down from speaking the truth that went against the political and religious leaders of the time and day when he was alive on the earth. And then purple represented royalty and King Jesus, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Now, lastly, speaking of how I came back to Christianity shortly after having done the meditation circle thing, not too long after I did, there was one kind of disturbing circumstance that leads me to believe that I was probably being oppressed by dark spirits, possibly due to the fact that I had been dabbling in witchcraft, like how I mentioned earlier that I had been reading oracle cards. And I was living with my parents at the time, just trying to recover from severe PTSD. And I started saying to my dad, "Thank you for obeying God by praying for me." But as I was trying to say those words, it's like I couldn't get them out of my mouth very well, like something was constricting my throat or something like that. And then I felt like a force push me back onto the couch. So then my parents and a friend of theirs laid hands on me and prayed for me to be delivered from any demonic oppression. Things were then better for the time being, but I actually have another memory of being in the waiting room at a mental health care facility that I was going to get treatment at, and I saw a woman who was wearing a cross necklace, and I remember just feeling repulsed by it, and that wasn't really me. So it seems like there was still something there kind of oppressing me for a little while. But I just kept leaning into the light side of the spiritual world and, reading the Bible, seeking Jesus, and things did gradually, eventually stop and get a lot better. Thank you again so much for being here. Please click the thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share it with somebody else who would also enjoy it. If you're not already, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at AnnaSpeaksOut17 and on Facebook where my username is Anna Charity. Thank you again so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.